Hello, everyone, and happy Thursday. Welcome back for another Voices of Resilience, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube Live. My name is Nathan Hofer, and I am the Director of Campus Operations for the Lost&Found Association. If you don't know who Lost&Found is, or what Voices of Resilience is about, and you're just here because of our awesome guest, Dr. Kylie, who we'll meet in a moment, that's understandable. But I'll give you a quick view of who we are as an organization. So Lost&Found, we are a nonprofit based out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota here, and we focus on building resilience in young adults. We do that as a form of preventative mental health care to end suicide, because we know life gets hard. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And so we really work to try to bring tools to the table, bring communities, make networks of support for young adults so that when those times get hard, they know people they can rely on, they know how to handle situations, and we can move on to a place where suicide isn't something we even talk about. Self-harm is something we don't even consider as an option. So that's who we are. That's what our goal is. And we get to do awesome events and programs such as this Voices of Resilience that we get to do every Thursday. And before we dig in here, I do want to say thank you to our sponsors, the Astrup Family Foundation and American Bank and Trust, for supporting the work of Lost&Found and allowing us to be able to do Voices of Resilience in the way that we're doing it. And like I said, I get to benefit every week by having people, wonderful people, come talk. And you accidentally saw that banner that was not supposed to be running on the bottom, but that's coming up for Cheryl Rice in a couple of weeks. So check her out. That was me testing something, and I didn't realize was still testing it. This is real life, everyone, 2020. But like I said, Voices of Resilience is something that I feel has been a real benefit because we get to talk to wonderful people who are doing great things in their communities. And today we have one of those wonderful people. We have Dr. Kylie Bartles with Pivotal Health Chiropractic. Hi, Kylie.
Hello.
And I as I say often every week, I just feel like I'm just like get to hang out with people that I enjoy, and it's like, it's my job, and it's not so bad. But Kylie is definitely a friend of our family. As most people, she enjoys my wife more. And that's what happens. Everyone who knows my wife will love her more than me, and that's smart. That's the right choice. She's much better than I am. But Kylie, welcome to Voices of Resilience. Thanks for being here with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So Kylie, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Like about your work, about what brought you here, and no one knows who you are really. So let's just give the people what they want, Kylie. They
all right. So I'm Kylie. I live currently in River Falls, Wisconsin, and I'm a chiropractor. I just recently opened Pivotal Health Chiropractic in New Richmond, Wisconsin. Prior to that, I am from Sioux Falls, so I moved here in the end of June. So that's a little bit of background about where I'm at. And then, as I mentioned, I'm a chiropractor. And then some, I guess techniques that I practice along with that are functional medicine and applied kinesiology. So I do a decent amount of lifestyle work and nutrition support along with my chiropractic care. That's some background.
Yeah, and because I have so many questions about the health and wellness thing, but I do have a question that in my head I should have realized beforehand, because I thought you went to start Pivotal back in like January or February, but you went in June in the midst of a pandemic.
Yeah.
So I feel like I need to ask the question that we're probably some of us are thinking is, how has that gone, and what led to that, that decision? Because you're making a hard decision at any time to open a business, and it's a much harder decision when you are trying to do it in the midst of at least you know what you were getting into, I should say.
I guess, or I was naive probably is part of it. Sometimes you feel called and passionate about something, and you don't really fully see all of the obstacles laid out in front of you until they're presented. But yeah, it's been going really well. Definitely looks a lot different than maybe what I would have envisioned as far as starting a business. I didn't have the opportunity to have, like a in-person grand opening. I just recently rescheduled my ribbon cutting ceremony, different obstacles as far as like getting groups of people together. But it's allowed for me to take opportunities like this a lot more frequently and try and get my face at least out in social media, try and make connections that way. So I would say that's probably the biggest obstacle, really, and kind of for everyone right now. That's what it's like, finding ways around that personal face-to-face connection.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just before we get in here, I see we have some live viewers, and that's wonderful. If anyone has any questions for Kylie, please post them in the comments, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube, because as I say every week, I have lots of questions, but I'd rather hear what you want to know. We have to listen to me anyway. Let's at least ask questions that you want to know the answer to. So feel free to post those at any point, and we will bring them in to the conversation. So Kylie, you just touched on something that stood out to me that it kind of leads into what I wanted to talk about anyway. But you mentioned that having a passion and a calling for something, sometimes you do things that even when it doesn't necessarily make sense, or when it does make sense, but you have to do hard things. So what was it about functional medicine, about chiropractic care? What about that is what called you to do this kind of work instead of doing something different?
Yeah. I think it's something that I discover more and more each day. I don't think that it was a purpose that I even still fully understand. So it wasn't necessarily a full understanding of the passion that caused the action necessarily. It's just something that to go back to how I got into chiropractic, I guess. So in high school, I was a gymnast, and I had just kind of some of your average aches from moving my body in weird ways. And so I would go see the chiropractor and get adjusted and feel amazing. And it was just kind of like, if anything was wrong, I wasn't worried about it because it was going to be solved there. And then I went to college, and I actually was electrical engineering major because I loved physics in high school. And as soon as I got into that realm, I was like, oh man, okay. So I enjoyed like the high school side of physics. I enjoyed doing the math problems, and the homework was like fun for me and easy compared to other subjects. But then when I was submerged in it, I realized this is not like, there's no passion. I don't care to sit at a desk and do this, or, I don't feel driven. But I really enjoyed working with people and seeing how I could help them to not just like feel better, but live better, I guess. And that summer, my uncle had said, well, Dr. Tyler probably could use some help this summer. Like, he is a chiropractor and he could use some help. He was my chiropractor, so I knew that, and a family friend. And so I went and CA'd. I was an assistant there, and that's when my eyes were open. Like, this is really cool stuff. Like, it's more than just what I had known chiropractic to be, even though same doctor, but just when I got the opportunity to shadow him and see it from a different angle, how many different, I guess, different like cases or different reasons that people were there, and different ways that he was able to support that. And then I just felt like, oh, this makes complete sense. And these were, time after time, there were cases of people who'd been dealing with certain issues, we'll call them, for years and years. And they'd say, like, I have been to the doctor, I have been to Mayo, I have been to and like, I haven't seen any improvements or results. And then when we were able to, care for them in a different way and address lifestyle and nutrition in a different way, make sure their nervous system was functioning, then to see the improvements, that's really what made me feel passionate about it.
Well, that is awesome. And of course you were a gymnast. How did I not know that? That makes so much sense.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned something that I think maybe I have an inside view because like I said, my wife worked with you for a while, and worked at the same place you did before, leaving to open Pivotal. Now, I have a kind of an understanding of functional medicine, of holistic health, but can you maybe explain a little bit of what goes into that? As you kind of touched on a little bit here, but
Yeah.
I think digging in a little deeper might be helpful for us to really further engage in the conversation.
Yeah. So functional medicine ultimately is just about trying to look upstream of the condition that someone's presenting or seeking care for. So rather than just looking at the symptoms and trying to address those, it's digging into whether it's the history or the lab work, trying to find something underlying or upstream that could be contributing or triggering the issue.
Awesome. And I can attest as a former client that there is something to be said about all these varying pieces of wellness that go into it, because there's issues that I had that got addressed that I just kind of thought it was just going to be like a monthly thing. Every month come in, get adjusted, and then just like wait another month till I need to have it be readjusted, so
Right.
So it's a very interesting view on things, and I think it really leads into one of the many reasons why I wanted you to come in and chat with us here, because we think about wellness and well-being, and when we think of wellness, we often think of the physical, of the going to the gym and eating right and stuff. But I know that there's so much more to that, and I'd love to know what your own personal experience has been. Obviously, you mentioned being a gymnast, being an athlete, but what has your personal experience been with physical wellness, and how have you seen the need for this balance of like these other pieces that go into wellness, and as well as we know that physical wellness is an integral part of mental well-being. They go hand in hand. They aren't separate. You can be really physically fit, but they have to go together for wholeness. So what has your experience been on a personal level?
Yeah. So definitely what stands out to me in the physical realm, it's easiest for me to identify, but it's probably true in a lot of other areas in my life, is that I used to be, I'm working on that, and so I won't identify myself as it anymore, but very more of an extremist, more of an all or nothing. And I think that kind of came from more of a type A personality. And so if we go to the topic of physical fitness, I competed in bodybuilding. And it's not anything that I regret. I absolutely learned so many amazing lessons from it.
I shouldn't regret it.
Sorry?
I said you shouldn't regret it. You're jacked.
Thank you. Yeah, it was amazing, and I wouldn't write off doing it again by any means. But that being said, it is an extreme. So it's not a lifestyle. It's not. I mean, there are some probably professional bodybuilders who make a lifestyle of it for several years, but for the most part, it's not something that's maintainable. It's more to the extreme end of things. And so I guess I can give a piece of information, like both on the positive and the negative side, as far as like how that affected me mentally. When we bring in the idea that it's not just physical health, there's an emotional and a mental side to it. And so the one thing that I took away from bodybuilding, the biggest, most amazing thing was it was probably the first time in my life when I really showed up for myself. So like I said, I had a little bit more of a type A personality, to where I did generally well in school. I was, like I mentioned, a gymnast, really involved in a lot of different areas, and did generally pretty well, but it was never anything really like this, where with bodybuilding, like I decided I wanted to do it. Now, I will say my dad did bodybuilding all throughout growing up, so it wasn't something that was totally new to me. He owned a gym when I was young and those kinds of things, so it was in my wheelhouse of knowledge to some degree. But nevertheless, this was the first time where I was kind of like, I made this decision to do something, and it was really up to me to show up for myself every day. It was while I was in chiropractic school, actually. So my dad was kind of coaching me long distance. So he was in Sioux Falls and I was in Minneapolis. But still, when it would come time for like a 5 a.m. cardio session, like nobody's there to tell me to get out of bed and do it, you know? I didn't have anybody really, like anybody else to hold. Well, I mean, I did have people who were checking in, trying to help me hold accountability. But for the most part, it was me showing up for me, and then getting to see actual physical changes manifest in the mirror, you know, of what that looked like for me, showing up for me, whether it was a cardio session or just sticking to my meal plan, you know, different things like that. So that was a hugely awesome thing to take away from that, just what you can achieve when you show up for yourself. And then on the other aspect of things, you know, like I mentioned before, it is kind of an extreme, it's off more to one extreme. And so I think that made finding balance maybe a little bit more challenging down the road, whether it was in my own view of my physical body, or even just in a view of finding balance in diet and exercise and all of those things. Just like finding balance was a little bit harder after that, but I don't know if that.
That's understandable. I mean, that's an intense well activity. I mean, you said when you said get up at 5 for accountability, I'm like, no, you didn't understand. I would not have been there. But you know, I think about that though. I'm sure that experience has really helped shape your own, you know, the way you treat people, the way you engage with others. Because I think it'd be interesting to hear a little bit about, you know, obviously you can't tell us about people you treat, but you know, I know from my own experience, you use a variety of methods to treat people, and so, and also being the healthcare practitioner that you are, you're often under, you know, it's like it's the living in the fishbowl effect. So you're like, people are looking at you and watching what you do. So I mean, how was it for you to be able to know that things were maybe a little out of balance and that you had folks watching you, looking to you for advice and support, and then also like, you know, that the secondary question is how have you seen yourself in your clients, in your, you know, the people that you have to see and treat, and how you treat them?
Oh, yeah, that's huge. And I think the biggest thing for me is just like come to the point of honoring that we're all on a journey and that sometimes we have to experience those extremes in order to find our middle ground. And so I try not to take on the hat of like hero or rescuer or Dr. Dictator, any of those things, but rather just like have an amount of grace for where that person is at and help them to connect with where they are and with themselves. Because I truly believe that whatever position or situation that you're in, you're there for a reason, and the best that you can do is sink into it. There's something that either you're learning from it or somebody around you who's going through it or watching you, maybe you don't even know there's something they're taking away from it. And so really just like honoring the place that you're in and allowing that, I guess, has been huge.
Well, that's a really great take on things. I think something we can hopefully a takeaway for myself and for others is that sometimes the place you're in is good, sometimes it's hard, but there's always something that you can be acknowledging in that moment, and that you said there's this, you can honor what that moment is and learn something. Hopefully we're always learning, but you know, oftentimes I shut that part of my brain off, it seems like. So it's a good reminder for that.
Yeah.
You know, chiropractic care too is, as you well know, but no one on our audience knows, is that I've kind of like by voluntarily administered myself to a life of chiropractic understanding, as my wife's family is all chiropractors, good, you know, good chunk of her friends work in that realm. So it's like, you know, I'm living a new life here, you know. But so when people think about, even when I speak for myself, when I say people, I speak of Nathan. You know, when I thought of chiropractic care, I thought of, you know, like go in, get my back cracked, go get my shoulder put back in this right spot and go on. But as you kind of already alluded to, there's so much more to that. So how how have you kind of worked, I would say against that stigma, but like how have you dealt with that process that stigma, and then really found ways to really promote and talk about what it is to be in the midst of holistic health, because it is so, I hate to say it, but we've tried to not do some of the things like, not as much gluten, not as much dairy, and I hate to say that I don't feel as good when I eat them, because it makes me sad, because cheese is awesome.
Yeah.
And here I am, now I'm stuck in a cheeseless wasteland. So what is it that you see in these spaces that you've had to deal with, especially going to a new location, opening up something new in a space where you don't have maybe the connections, maybe the base for that? Like, how have you had to deal with that?
Mm-hmm. Oof, that's an interesting question. Um, so I guess as far as going back to the adjustment, I still, as a chiropractor, I highly value the adjustment. I feel ultimately that our maybe even only healer is our own bodies. And so I think the adjustment is a hugely impactful way to allow for the body to do that. As long as our nervous system is firing, then our bodies are going to be better at healing themselves, basically, in the simplest terms. And then as far as utilizing nutrition and functional medicine alongside of that, and some of the different modalities and things that I do utilize, I've just found that a couple different things. Like, one, they're something that helps maintain the benefits of the adjustment longer, in my experience, and also people are interested in doing as much as they can to support their health, especially now, especially if they're taking the initiative to walk through the door and take that action, and they want to know. And so I feel called to share what I do know. If they're interested, then we might as well utilize as many tools as we have in the toolbox. Yeah, I think.
On a sidebar, what are some of the tools that you use? Because once again, like, so part of it is just having a better understanding of what the work is that you do, but I think it'll also really fit into the rest of our conversation. And then I have a comment to make about some of the things that you do, Kylie.
Yeah.
But what are some of the techniques that you use that people might not think about when they think about going to a chiropractor?
Yeah. So I utilize applied kinesiology, which is a practice that takes manual muscle testing as well as acupuncture meridian philosophy, as well as neural lymphatics. So it takes a bunch of different things into account, all wrapped up into one. So it's a way to get a lot more information from even just a physical exam than you would with just simply range of motion and nerve testing. And then on top of that, I have something called a BIA, which looks at body composition at the cellular level. So that's a really nice way to get some objective data about how hydration status is, or toxicity, or inflammation, a whole bunch of different values, bone density, things like that. I utilize laboratory screenings, or do blood draws, lab draws, to get other objective numbers to see where any deficiencies might lie. And then I have an infrared sauna right here behind me, a couple other things like that.
For the record, I have already talked to Kylie about this, so she knows it's coming. But I still think back to like a pretty bad injury I had on my knee, and the things that I have, a couple things I don't like: being still, needles, and being in hot heat. And so Kylie, in her state of being, she did acupuncture on my leg in the sauna, and I couldn't move for 35 minutes for several weeks. It got better and it worked, but I will tell you what, bitterness. Now,
Yeah.
so part of the reason why I ask about all these different things that you do is not just to inform, but also to kind of get a better, what I'm seeing, what I want others to see and hear, is that when you're taking care of your wellness, it's not a one size fits all. It's not,
Right.
you can't just use one thing, even if it's really effective, it all ties together. And so, obviously our topic today is about being self-full, and I kind of took a long time for us to get here, but because I think it's good to understand where you're coming from with it, but also see, like I said, how so many things interact with what goes into self-care. So with that in mind, what is it, what does that topic of being self-full mean to you? And how do you, apply that to the work you do with others, to workplace wellness, to all sorts of other stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So to me, being self-full means really honoring yourself, and not just like in the time that you take to do typical self-care, but in your everyday life, allowing for your authenticity to come through, and a little bit like we talked about before, like just acknowledging what stage you're in your life, those kinds of things. And so when it translates to caring for someone, it is taking all those things into account, trying to mentally and emotionally meet someone where they're at, but also from even just like the chemical and physical standpoint, take into account where they're at and see what's going to help care for them best, taking everything into account.
So what is it about being in the realm of self-care? I think we think about, we think about like, like I already mentioned, we think about, I got to eat right, I got to go to the gym, I got to run or whatever. But I feel like we're missing a lot of the pieces that really take someone to a place of true health. Because we're in the holiday season here. I don't want to talk about how much turkey I've eaten, but we know that historically, I don't know for everyone, but a lot of folks would probably agree that as we get into the holiday season, we are spending time with others. We're maybe traveling. It might look very different this year, of course, but we also food is often central to that, and oftentimes maybe not great food for you, even
Right.
if it is delicious. I just think about we're in this time of where we see time and again that this season we have people who kind of struggle with wellness, and they make a New Year's resolution to get fit, to get healthy, and then after that they some of them keep it on, but most people fall off. So what can we be doing right now in this space to be focused on our self-care while still being caring for others, and not be, I think self-full is such a unique word, a unique phrase, and I think for some, the concept of self-care translates to being selfish, but I don't. But that's not.
Right.
That's not it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I wanted to kind of break the stigma of self-care being selfish. And also in the holiday season, it is that time of giving. And a lot of times, selfless can be a term that gets a little bit exalted. And sometimes I don't love the energy that gets put off with the term selfless either. Like, we are created to be ourselves, and the world is going to benefit from us giving of ourselves, our true selves, authentically. And so I think being full of ourselves, or self-full, is going to be like the best answer for that ultimately. But to get back on track, as far as the holidays, and being self-full in your dietary decisions, and different things like that, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. And so one kind of goes back to that idea of trying to navigate away from the extremes and finding a little bit of a balance. And that is that a holiday is a time that's different than the rest of the other days of the year, and that's why it's called a holiday. And so for your lifestyle measures to be a little bit different, I think is okay. I think just to allow that to be a day rather than Christmas Day, to say things are going to look different dietary wise this day, not this weekend, not this whole month, not this whole season, right? But just this day. And also, actually, one of my somebody I really look up to, Dr. Deanna Minnick. She is faculty at the Institute for Functional Medicine. She recently shared a story on her Instagram, a study. I'm going to see if I can find it so that I don't quote it wrong. But it was on blood sugar, and it was that the perception of sugar intake has a more profound effect on blood sugar than the actual intake. So it was two groups of type 2 diabetics, and all of them in both groups were given a beverage that had 15 grams of sugar. However, the labels read differently. So one group had a label that said 0 grams of sugar. The other group had a label that said 30 grams of sugar, even though they were all 15 grams. And then what they found from measuring their blood sugar at baseline, 20 minutes, 40 minutes, and 60 minutes was that the difference in the curves between both of the groups were the same. Even though like their perception of what it was different. And so when they thought that they were drinking no sugar, their blood glucose curve spiked less than when they thought they were drinking a high sugar beverage. So I think that also that speaks to just the power of the brain and perception in general, where like, let's say your grandma makes this dessert that like historically has been your favorite, right? And she's like, I made this just for you, you know? So your perception of that and how you act on that is going to be huge, I think, even to how it will affect your physiology. So if your thoughts and perceptions are saying in your head, like, oh, this is going to destroy my whole week. I'm going to gain fat from this. I'm going to have a terrible stomach ache, and then you choose to eat it anyway, you're probably going to do your body more harm than if you were to say, oh, this is such a nice act of love. Like, I'm going to choose that I am worthy of this little bit of indulgence, and I'm going to have an accurate, like a small portion, or like a good amount. I'm not trying to promote binging on it, right? But like choosing to partake, then it's not going to probably affect your blood sugar or your health as much. So how you're honoring yourself in that moment is important. And the reverse is also true. If grandma, presents that to you and really you don't want to eat it, then it's okay to say like, oh, thank you, it smells and looks beautiful, but I'm not hungry right now. Or you can go further and say like, but I've been dealing with this health thing, and for that reason, I'm gonna choose not to. So I really try and steer myself away from using, and those around me away from using the term can't. It just puts a negative connotation. It's uncomfortable for everyone involved. It brings in an amount of like shame and deprivation, I guess. So really like looking within and saying, why is it that you are choosing not to partake? And then having a good way to communicate that for everyone around you.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because it's, yeah, the power of your thoughts. That's a really interesting study, just to have that put out there, because we talk about mind over matter. That's the phrase that people use all the time, but there's obviously some evidence to back that up. And as we're mentioning the holiday season, I mean, we're talking about what we see as a typical holiday experience for people is going to be with family, going to have a decadent meal or two, but we know for a lot of people that isn't the case. And so we see those issues that come from being in a negative headspace when you're alone, or you're disjointed. And we see all the jokes about like what Thanksgiving dinner and Christmas dinner with family looks like, but we know that those jokes come from a place of truth. That's why we think they're funny a little bit. So how can you help promote your own wellness, knowing that how integral the mental piece of that is? What would you tell a client or a friend or something from your experience, from your view? How can they be, like you said, self-full, taking care of their physical body, but also, like we mentioned at the beginning, the integration of mental and physical is so interwoven, but if they're, how do you can get them to be in a positive mental health space as well?
Yeah. Um, I think it really does kind of go back to like trying to take a look within about, what your goals are at that moment, and why. And I think it's important to just, especially around the holidays, if you are getting together, I always find it even still very powerful for me to take a few minutes before I, either like as I'm driving there, before I leave, to have time to kind of like regroup and decide. Because for some reason, whenever I'm in that atmosphere where I'm surrounded by family and the food's already out and whatever else it might be, that it's just kind of a blur, and before you know it, whatever's happened has happened. So taking a little bit of time beforehand to kind of set out the intention, check in with how you're feeling. And in this realm, when it comes to me talking to like practice members, usually there's something a little bit deeper going on health wise, and oftentimes there's a gut imbalance that we're addressing. So for that purpose, it comes back to like what is going to be fueling, what's going to be nurturing to my actual GI tract, and sometimes that can be powerful in just having a way to share with people, like, this isn't just about like vanity, or this isn't me just thinking I'm going to get fat. Like there's something deeper going on. But yeah, I think just focusing on what your outcome is, whether it is like, I just don't want to feel like crap at the end of the day. Like you said, like you've noticed a difference when you stay away from certain foods, So just like keeping those things in mind, maybe.
Yeah, see, I love my wife dearly, and we joke that her love language is like cleaning and organization. Mine is food, and so it's like, and I can't help it. It's just how I'm wired. I mean, I can't help it, but I've learned new things. And one thing
Yeah.
that I'm thinking about as we've had this conversation is that we are, in case you didn't know, we're in a pandemic.
Yeah.
Who knew? But we're having more people working, working at home. Gyms may or may not be open, and so
Yeah.
that physical aspect of wellness, and
Mhm.
as well as that mental and emotional piece as well, is often difficult to maintain some type of balance, especially for people who have been, have a gym membership and are working out regularly. I'm not one of those people. I should be, but I'm not. But it's like, what is like how can you, are some tangible things that people can do to engage in staying well physically and mentally in this time? Because I mentioned this probably last time, every time probably, I don't know, talking about the effects of isolation, and we're dealing with a whole host of things that we just haven't had to deal with in the same way before. And so but the physical wellness is one that I've seen and heard a lot of folks talking about, like, it's hard to engage well. It's hard to feel motivated to like cook something when every day looks the same, or it's hard to figure out a way to work out when you have, a family, or even if you don't have a family, like if you're at your apartment and you don't like, it's not comfortable. It doesn't feel like the place to work out. So what are some tangible things that maybe you've given this advice already, or you would give this advice to others that they can engage in their own self-care, even if they're locked down and they don't get to go anywhere?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know that both of us are in the Midwest, and it also is going to continue to get colder and snowier as the days progress. However, I think getting outside is so huge, and a monumental difference and impact as far as physical activity. Even if you are just going for a 20-minute walk, even if you have to bundle up to the extreme to do that, like getting outside, moving, getting fresh air. On days like today, there's actually some sunshine, so that's an added benefit as well. If you have a dog, they're a great way to keep you accountable on getting outside every day, even just for a few minutes. And then look into trying out something new. If you haven't done like winter sports, see about trying some skiing or some snowshoeing or something like that. But outdoor activity is a really great way to still maintain that movement and that physical aspect without having access to a gym. And then, everything is going to circle back to what can we benefit from internet. And there are a lot of group, if you're somebody who does a lot better in like a class, there's a lot of classes that are put on that you can attend live via Zoom or different things like that. And then YouTube actually has a ton of free, whether it's yoga or non-weight, even ones that are like non-jumping if you're on the second floor of an apartment or whatever, different like exercises that you can do. And for me, as far as like maintaining those practices in a time like this, something that I found to be really huge is maintaining my morning routine or my morning rituals have really just helped me to stay on track day to day. And so for me, it looks like right away when I wake up, I do like a 5 or 10-minute meditation most of the time. And then from there, I go into journaling. And I mean, I don't have any kids, okay? So I know that that's a factor. I know not everyone is going to be able to do exactly that, but no matter what that practice is for you, having some type of physical reminder. So for me, my journal has those things kind of like notated out where I can plan what's my movement going to be today? What's my moment of inspiration going to be? Different things like that. If you don't have that, maybe you drink coffee every day. Maybe you have a physical note on your coffee machine, that reminds you of something, but some type of visual, I think can help with that motivation for me.
Tangibility, visibility. Yeah, that's definitely important. Some people I know, I'm not naming names, have 2, maybe 3 coffees.
Yeah.
By the way, based on what you just said about your morning routine, I'll be sending Letty to you shortly. We shall see how
Perfect.
So you've kind of given some great. I mean, you have given some great advice for ways that people can engage in their self-care. And I'm going to maybe ask you to be a bit vulnerable, and you can say no, thank you. But I'd love to know ways that, like, during this time, I mean, you've had a pandemic is a time of multiple transitions, and you've had some by choice, some that haven't been by choice. So we know that transitions can lead to vulnerability and growth and struggle. But we see all these things in these moments. So what are some things that maybe that you have been struggling with during this season of life, and how have you what are some ways that you've worked to deal with those and get back up again if you've been knocked down a little bit? Because I bet you have. We all have.
Yeah.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say one for me has been fatigue. For one, it's natural, I think, for me on a yearly basis to feel an energy shift when we go into winter. So I was kind of aware of that. But then, like you mentioned, there was a whole bunch of other things at the same time, me moving and starting a practice, being a first-time business owner, all of those things, just a lot of different stress. And so I already knew that those things were contributing just from my background knowledge, knew that a lot of that was leading to the fatigue. And as far as how I was able to address that, a lot of different ways. One, for me, I am more of a natural exerciser. Take my background into account, and I would be somebody who would be going to the gym 6 days a week. And that's just normal for me. That's what I did. And so for me, it was actually learning how to rest, learning how to not go to the gym. So it's the opposite of like, you need to exercise. It was like,
I can teach you how to not go to the gym. I'm here for you. I can teach you that.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so just like honoring my body, allowing myself to rest, not lifting weights every day, allowing even for a nap some of the time. But then beyond that too, just knowing that I already had those stressors, then it became important for me to take control of the areas that I could. And so my diet is definitely one of those that I have control over. So as long as I allow myself time to plan out a menu and prep the food, which honestly, I am the master of like getting a healthy meal together in 10 minutes. Like it doesn't have to be complicated. And as long as you buy the right things at the grocery store, that's where it actually all begins. So yeah, addressing my diet was a huge way. And then actually also I did take advantage of doing a lab draw and looking at my nutrient status. And I did find a couple of deficiencies. And so addressing those as well as, still maintaining the other aspects, the healthy diet and, addressing physical movement and things like that. But yeah.
As we're kind of coming to getting ready to close up here pretty soon. You just mentioned you had the benefit of doing like a lab draw. I don't do needles, as you know. I will pass. But what are some of those? I mean, for someone who's watching, what are some common nutrient deficiencies that you're seeing with people in general, like with your clients and stuff that you, or just know what your knowledge is of well-being? What are some things that you're seeing and that people are maybe a little deficient in pretty regularly, and what can they do to maybe fill those gaps?
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as a micronutrient status goes, vitamin D deficiency is hugely common, very hugely common, especially here in the Midwest. And that is an easy one to go ahead and utilize supplementation. An added benefit is it's going to support your immunity, and we're all looking for ways to help ourselves out in that area. And another big one that is pretty common, a pretty common deficiency would be magnesium, which you can get in food sources from green vegetables are a really great place, but also supplementing with magnesium is a nice, easy thing to do. And another really common thing that we see is imbalance between omega-3s and omega-6s. So taking a good high quality fish oil is a really great way to do that. Most of the deficiencies that we see are to the degree that just simply increasing fatty fish in the diet is probably not reasonable. In some situations, you would have to consume upwards of 3 servings of that fish on a daily basis, which is not anything anybody's really interested in doing, not to mention that the quality of fish that you're going to find in South Dakota probably not going to cut it, right? And the reverse of that is that the omega-6s are so high in the diet because they're really common in some of those processed foods and in some of the meat products that consume some of the omega-6s. For instance, like corn is going to be higher in omega-6s. So an animal that's eating corn is then therefore going to have higher omega-6 levels and so on. So limiting some of those processed foods and then increasing some of the healthier fats, but then also considering a good quality omega-3 supplement.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kylie. And as anyone who's watched this knows, I like to always end with a note of positivity. So what are some things that you're really looking forward to that are giving you hope for the future?
Oh man, I'm always looking forward to things. I'm looking forward to being home for the holidays. I'm looking forward to building and growing my practice even more here, getting to know and see people, and ultimately, like, when I can have that moment of connection with really any human where you can both share and receive knowledge and growth, that's really what it's all about. So I think just any opportunity to connect with someone and learn from them and also share what I know is what keeps me going.
That's awesome. Well, I'm thankful you took the time today, Kylie, to join us. And for those of you who are out there watching and you're thinking you want to know more, you want to Kylie touched on some things that you're kind of interested in, or you've never heard before and you want to connect with her, I've just tossed it on the banner here, pivotalhealthchiro.com. Feel free to go and check that out. I will actually type it into our chat right now so people can access that, and you can get in touch with Kylie there. Also, whoops, I need to have to edit that one later. I typed the wrong thing. I added a V instead of a C.
I see that.
That's what I was before. It's fine. I'll fix it in a bit. Typos on the whim here. It's all good. But also, if you want to connect with Kylie, or you're in the Midwest here and you want to connect with us, you can reach us on social media on Facebook or Instagram at Resilient Today, all one word. And if you want to check out our website, get rid of the @ sign and toss a .org on the end, and you've got our website. So we're here every Thursday, and we might not be the be all end all for your well-being and anything you're dealing with, but we do want to support you and find space for you to get connected with help if you need it. So feel free to reach out to us at any time as well. And Kylie, thank you so much for taking the time today. Like I said, it's always good to spend time with you, but it was really wonderful to hear and learn more about how we can take care of our physical wellness to support our general health today. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, and like I said, next Thursday, we will be back. We'll be back right here at 2 p.m. And as you already saw by my accidental banner, we'll be having Cheryl Rice of the You Matter Marathon on. So join us here next Thursday at 2 p.m. And Kylie, thanks again for being here. And we'll see everyone next week.